Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may.
Welcome to the Black Chicago Museum. In today's art project, we are going to explore the exhibit titled The Great Migration, 1915 to 1970. In this wonderful experience, we are going to learn about what the Great Migration was and why it occurred. And we are going to do that through a wonderful book titled The Great Migration, an American Story, paintings by Jacob Lawrence. Before we begin the story, we are going to hear a description of the Great Migration by Jacob Lawrence. This is the story of an exodus of African Americans who left their homes and farms in the South around the time of World War I and traveled to northern industrial cities in search of better lives. It was a momentous journey. Their movement resulted in one of the biggest population shifts in the history of the United States, and the migration is still going on for many people today. The Great Migration is a part of my life. I grew up knowing about people on the move from the time I could understand what words meant. There was always talk in my house of other families arriving from the South. My family was part of the first big wave of the migration, which occurred between the years 1916 and 1919. My mother was born in Virginia, and my father was born in South Carolina. Somehow they met on their way north, and I was born in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1917. We settled for a while in Philadelphia. Many other families settled there too, but many traveled even farther to Pittsburgh, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and St. Louis. The Great Migration, an American Story, paintings by Jacob Lawrence. Around the time I was born, many African Americans from the South left home and traveled to cities in the North in search of a better life. My family was part of this great migration. There was a shortage of workers in the northern factories because many had left their jobs to fight in the First World War. The factory owners had to find new workers to replace those who were marching off to war. Northern industries offered Southern blacks jobs as workers and lent them money to be repaid later for their railroad tickets. The northbound trains were packed with recruits. Nature had ravaged the South. Floods ruined the farms. The boll weevil destroyed cotton crops. The war had doubled the cost of food, making life even harder for the poor. Railroad stations were so crowded with migrants that guards were called in to keep order. The flood of migrants northward left crops back home to dry and spoil. For African Americans, the South was barren in many ways. There was no justice for them in the courts, and their lives were often in danger. Although slavery had long been abolished, white landowners treated the black tenant farmers harshly and unfairly. And so the migration grew. Segregation divided the South. The black newspapers told of better housing and jobs in the North. Families would arrive very early at railroad stations to make sure they could get on the northbound trains. Early arrival was not easy because African Americans found on the streets could be arrested for no reason. And the migrants kept coming. In the South, there was little opportunity for education, and children labored in the fields. These were more reasons for people to move north, leaving some communities deserted. There was much excitement and discussion about the Great Migration. Agents from northern factories flocked into southern counties and towns looking for laborers. Families often gathered to discuss whether to go north or to stay south. The promise of better housing in the north could not be ignored. The railroad stations were crowded with migrants. Letters from relatives in the North and articles in the black press portrayed a better life outside the South. Many migrants arrived in Chicago. In Chicago and other cities, they labored in the steel mills and on the railroads. And the migrants kept coming. Southern landowners, stripped of cheap labor, tried to stop the migration by jailing the labor agents and the migrants. Sometimes the agents disguised themselves to avoid arrest, but the migrants were often taken from railroad stations and jailed until the trains departed. Black and white Southern leaders met to discuss ways to improve conditions to stop the flow of workers north. Although life in the North was better, it was not ideal. Many migrants moved to Pittsburgh, which was a great industrial center at the time. Although they were promised better housing in the North, some families were forced to live in overcrowded and unhealthy quarters. The migrants soon learned that segregation was not confined to the South. Many northern workers were angry because they had to compete with the migrants for housing and jobs. There were riots. Longtime African American residents living in the North did not welcome the newcomers from the South and often treated them with disdain. The migrants had to rely on each other. The storefront church was a welcoming place and the center of their lives, in joy and in sorrow. Black professionals, such as doctors and lawyers, soon followed their patients and clients north. Female workers were among the last to leave. Life in the North brought many challenges, but the migrants' lives had changed for the better. The children were able to go to school, and their parents gained the freedom to vote. And the migrants kept coming. Theirs is a story of African American strength and courage. I share it now as my parents told it to me because their struggles and triumphs ring true today. People all over the world are still on the move, trying to build better lives for themselves and for their families. The end. All right, so we are now about to get into the fun part. Today we are creating a painting inspired by Jacob Lawrence from the Read Aloud you just heard. Nakia is going to lead us on this magical journey, so get your materials ready and let's go.
All right, so to start, we want to make sure that we have our materials. So you're going to need a pencil, your canvas board, some brushes, a flat brush, small flat brush, and probably a small round brush or a pointed one. If you have a palette or something to put your paint in, and of course all of your paints, your red, blue, yellow paint, and black and white to lighten and darken your colors, and then a bowl with some water in it. Okay, and remember that we want to take our process one step at a time. So to begin, we're going to be painting one of Jacob Lawrence's pictures, and I just decided that this one would be a good one for us to do because it shows the African American people traveling, like the story talked about, and migrating to the north. So if you notice with Jacob Lawrence and a lot of his pictures, he called himself a dynamic cubist. So a lot of his pictures are just basic shapes. So we're going to start with that. So go ahead and grab your pencil and your canvas board. So we're not going to do any sketches. We're just going to draw right on our board. So the first thing you're going to do is draw a horizontal line right across the top of your canvas. Just a nice straight line right on across the top. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're drawing this landscape right here. All right, and if you notice the way that the people are grouped here, we have 3 groups of people. So you can do a really light oval shape that starts from the corner of your board to the bottom, middle of your board. Just a really light circle. That's just going to show where your first group of people is going to go. And then towards the bottom here, you can put another really light circle, and that's just going to show where your second group of people is going to go. And then right here, really light circle, just to show where your third people are going to go. And then just looking at these basic shapes, we'll start right here in our corner, just draw a circle. And a nice little triangle, like a rounded triangle. And it's okay if she goes off the page. And if we're looking at our image here, we'll just see these basic shapes. So we have a long shape here per arm. And I don't want you to think about drawing heads and arms or things like that, just circles and shapes. So right next to her, or that shape, is another shape. So we'll just do a diagonal line because if you notice he's kind of leaning here. So just draw that to show his lean. And then for his suitcase. And as you move along, you'll be able to just identify the different shapes. So right above that square, you see he has his arm there, but let's draw. It's like a rounded triangle. And then we can put another circle on the top for his head. All right, and we're staying, excuse me, we're staying right in our little circle there. So now we're going to draw these 4 people. So a little circle here, a rounded triangle for the top, and a rounded triangle for the bottom here. And how about just some thick lines going out and another line going down for her leg, and another diagonal going down there. And you can just kind of follow. Just staying in your area here where your first group is and draw those shapes. Circle, a little slanted triangle there. And if you notice here, mine doesn't look exactly like his, and that's okay. This is an inspired painting that we're doing. It doesn't have to look exactly like his, okay? And so then we go our next person, just do your little circle. And it's basically just circles, triangles, and rectangles or squares. So right here, there's a nice rectangle shape there. And I'm gonna move right on over here. Oh, that looks very nice, Miss Lawson. I really like that. Looks good. So I'm gonna move right in this area, and I see this guy here. He has a oval, slanted oval shape head. So I'm gonna do that slanted oval. And I'm gonna do just a basic, kind of square-like. And another shape there for his arm. And this almost looks like a skateboard. Does that look like a skateboard to you?
It does.
So let's give him a skateboard. I don't know if they had skateboards. Well, I guess they did have that. This is during the 1940s when Jacob Lawrence actually did this series.
Yes.
And this is a 60-panel art series. And actually, did you know he was only 23 years old when he did this?
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Yeah, so he was very young, and he wanted to really just kind of show the experiences of black people during that time. And so one of the things, like we can see, is that he wasn't really concerned about making things look really realistic. He really just wanted to tell the story, and he used these basic shapes to represent people and tell that story. And actually, shapes and lines, they are the foundation for any drawing. Okay? So I'm just drawing my circles and my rounded triangles. How you doing over there, Miss Lawson?
I feel good about mine.
Good, good. I see you. I like the way that you're very freely just kind of going with it. You're not really stressing over it.
Right. The shapes help.
Yes, absolutely. And again, don't worry about if it doesn't look the same or if it's a little off as far as where it's positioned on your page. It'll just be a different composition. Okay, and if you can't fit all the people in there, that's fine too. Okay, you're just creating composition, and you're just telling the story that these people are leaving, or they're coming, they're moving. That's what they're doing.
Right.
All right, and I think that's a good composition that we have here for me, anyway, for my little people.
Yep.
They look like they're walking, and now here comes the fun part.
Okay.
So you have your primary colors here. You have your red, blue, and yellow. And with these three colors, you know you can make any other color, right?
Okay.
So we're going to start, and again, you can choose whatever colors that you want, but let's start with the background first. So I want to color back my sky first. I'm going to get me a little blue, and I'm going to get me a little white. And if you have a palette, you're going to add a little bit of your, some brushes for you. You're going to add a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the white and mix it up. If you don't have a palette, it's okay. You can kind of mix it up on the lid, or you can just use a plate, anything. You can use anything as a palette. And the white, it makes the colors, what do you think? What does white do to a color? Excuse me.
Make it brighter.
Makes it lighter, so it lightens up the color. Okay. And we want our blue sky to be really, really light, right?
Right.
We have our napkin, so that's to wipe off our brush. So the first thing we want to wet our brush. And you go ahead and make your blue and white for your sky, Miss Lawson.
Okay.
And once you get the color that you want, you can go ahead and begin painting that top half of that line right there. That's your sky. If you find that your paint is a little dry, just add a little water, and that's going to help your paint to move. Also, if you find that as you're painting, you're covering up your sketch you just did, it's okay, because you'll still be able to see a little bit of it, and then you can paint on top of it as well. So don't worry about that if you think you're going to be erasing what you just did, because you won't. Okay? And then you want to think about a little bit, I guess. Well, I guess we can do that as we go, but I want you to keep in mind that you don't have to use the same colors, but if you notice, there's a theme that Jacob Lawrence has with these colors. What colors do you see?
Primary color.
Mostly. Well, we see one primary color. What primary color do you see on there?
green pops out to me.
Okay, so green is not a primary color.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you said that. So I hadn't mentioned what the three primary colors are. They are red, blue, and yellow.
Okay,
And with
yellow.
those three colors, you can make any color. So the primary color here is yellow.
Yellow, okay.
But he has just basically 3 or 4 different colors here. He just has the yellow, the green, the black, orange there. And then there's some brown for the faces, and some have white hats. So very small color palette that he's using. So you don't have to use that same color palette. You can use another one. That was my only thing for mentioning that. So now for the ground. So we want to get our background done first.
Okay.
So we think about what colors that we want. And if you find that, I really like the way that you're doing that, Miss Lawson.
Thank you.
So Miss Lawson is going around her figures, which is fine as well. That is fine too. And I noticed that she's using a little bit more water and a little bit more white paint, and that's creating a texture there. So you can do that as well. You can blend that a little bit on the end.
Yes.
And I'm gonna get a little bigger brush, and I'm gonna make me some, this ground is a little brown. It doesn't look green.
Okay.
Now, brown, that's a tricky color to make,
Okay.
but you can still make it. So how do we make brown? We make brown by mixing yellow and red. Yellow and red make orange, and then we're gonna add a little bit of black.
Black.
So kind of like us, we come in all shades. You add a little black, you're gonna get some brown.
Yeah.
All right, so a little bit of black to your orange and yellow. Just a little. Just to show you how to make that color. I'm gonna cheat because I already have black on my palette, so I'm gonna use, brown on my palette, so I'm gonna use the brown that I have. And if you wanted your brown to be a little lighter, what do you think you would use to make your brown lighter?
The white.
Yep. Yep. So after you mix your red, and I'm just gonna go
Can I
ahead.
have some of your black?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And you have some brown on your palette as well. So I'm gonna wet my brush, and then I'm just gonna go right over the background there, and that's almost a perfect match there. I'm gonna paint the background. And the more water that you use, the more transparent the image will be, or the paint will be. Transparent meaning that you can see through it a little bit.
Oh, it is brown.
And the more paint that you use, the more opaque it'll be. So that means you can't see through it. So if you notice here, I have more water, so I can still see my pencil marks, and that's what I like. I want it to be transparent, so I'm using more water there. Okay, so you want to paint your whole surface in the background there. And pretty much after you're done doing your background, you can just color in your shapes in any color that you like. Jacob Lawrence, he did most of his people, as a matter of fact, all of his people, their faces and arms are brown. But you can make them any variation of black, brown, yellow, whatever you want for your people, because we all come in different colors, so, or different shades. So that is completely up to you. Alrighty, so now our canvas is dry from our background. Now we can go right ahead and begin painting our people. So I've already mixed some of my colors. I'm gonna do the people green and orange. I'm gonna pretty much follow Jacob's example, but I'm gonna make my people black. So let's start with the people. And remember, we're just doing shapes. So I hate to even use the word people. Here we go, brush. So wet your brush, and yep, go ahead and fill in those shapes. And you should be able to see what you've already drawn. And I'm just doing the, what do I want to say? The body. I'm not doing the clothes yet. So.
Same here.
So I'm finding where my images are, my circles and triangles and such, and just painting those right in for all of my little people. And so remember, your people do not have to all be the same shade. You can make them a different shade if you like. That's the beauty of art. And this little guy with the crooked head. And yes, he has a hat, but I think I'm gonna give him a hat a different color, or paint his hat a different color. And that goes for this guy too. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give him his hat right here. And see there, all I did was just draw a line and a circle shape. And actually, let's give this person a hat as well. Now typically we wouldn't use black to start. We would use black to end, but because it's because we're using it, we're going to use it. All right, so now I'm going to just jump in, and yeah, I'm going to finish. I'm going to make a couple of them all black. So this lady here, we're just going to paint her black. She had an arm there, and she has a little triangle here for her dress. Yeah, we're going to give her a hat and give him a neck. That's his hand. Give this person a neck. This person a neck. And they got a nice little arm going there, and they got a foot right there too. And a foot right there. All right, so now we can go and fill in our different colors. I'm gonna just jump into the orange.
Okay.
Oh, I like the way you did that as well, Miss Lawson. So Miss Lawson, she just did all of hers in black, and that's fine. Just when you go over it, if you wanted to add some color there, you just want to make sure that it's completely dry, because
Okay.
otherwise it will smudge.
Okay.
And you'll have a muddy, all your colors will be muddy. I always think about that saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I don't really like thinking about skinning cats. So the point is, there's more than one way to get your art completed, okay? Find the easiest ways for us to do that without us being all stressed out. So you have your reference here, and that's the beauty of it as well. You have your reference, you can look at the different shapes and basically go from there. And I am kind of following Mr. Lawrence's color scheme here a little bit. My green might be a little bit brighter than his, but I think we're going to stick with it a little bit. And you'll notice that some of the shapes may provide a different feeling. So for example, this person is walking here, but on mine, because he's kind of cut off, it looks like he's picking something up almost. At least to me, it does. Yep, I think I'm gonna go back to my black. And I'm gonna just follow Mr. Lawrence, just for the sake of time. We are gonna put a yellow hat on him though. Just for the sake of time, we're just gonna do what Mr. Lawrence did, so I won't have to think so much. Okay, that's green. Alright. So I've had a great time doing these videos. How about you, Miss Lawson?
Yes, same here.
And this, unfortunately, is our last one
This is
for
our last video.
our art series. I've had a great time. I hope you guys have learned a lot about the history of Black people in Chicago.
Yes, it's been a beautiful journey.
I certainly have learned quite a bit myself. And also, we hope that you were able to gain some new skills in drawing and seeing art in a different way.
I certainly have.
Being able to express yourself and know that it's not always about just making a pretty picture.
Right.
It is about making a pretty picture, but it's also about telling a story or just expressing yourself in whatever way that comes out.
Hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complication. Bite your lip and take the trip. Though there may be wet road ahead and you cannot slip, just move on up. For peace you'll find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Move on up and keep on wishing. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing.
On our way. Where you going?
I don't know. I want to go to Canada. I think I want Canada.
Canada? Okay. I think I'm going to New York. Where are you going on this migration travel? All right.
We'll see you next time on the other side.
Keep studying your history. Black Chicago, that is.